Hello, everyone. We're so glad you've joined us. We're really looking forward to today's webinar. Just as a reminder, we're the Intermission program, part of the Will Rogers Foundation. I'm Samantha, Director of Services. And this is our education program that we have here, that we are introducing new ideas and concepts and maybe some old ideas and concepts as a way to support our community. So we're so glad you joined us. And I'm going to welcome Alicia Jackson. Hi, Alicia.
Hi there, Samantha. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's so nice to
Whew,
see you.
you too, you too.
Thanks for joining us today. Alicia is a licensed counselor, and she specializes in the internal family systems, which we're going to talk about today, which is otherwise known as parts work.
Yeah.
Right. And we're going to do this a little different. We're going to do it in a conversation style. And, we welcome questions. So feel free to throw a question in the Q&A or in the chat box. Alicia and I will see it, and we'll get to them. And we'll get started. Alicia, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about today.
Yeah, me too. I was looking forward to the conversation. It's so fun to talk about the parts work because it's just another entire different way for us to be with ourselves and to figure out what's going on. Because sometimes you and I have talked about this before, that therapy is sometimes not affordable for everybody, and there's an access issue for people. And so what we want to do is bring information that people can apply themselves, and also give them things to think about, so that, if they do need support, there is support out there. We're here to support our community for sure, but that there's things that we can all do to be with ourselves in a different way. So I've got some notes in front of me, Alicia, so I'll start with I know we had like a little outline that we wanted to go through, but feel free to just take it away. And we were going to start with an introduction to the internal world.
Yeah, the internal world. It's we kind of use what I call part language, even not realizing that we do. We'll say a part of me feels this way, but a part of me feels this way. And it really lends to that we do have different parts of us that feel different things at the same time. And it can be a bit overwhelming. And so using part work to explore our inner world to really help us to know why we do what we do. That's also a common question, right? I logically know X, Y, and Z, but there's a part of me that feels completely different, and I don't understand why. And so really exploring and leaning into the curiosity of it to really help to understand our parts and how our inner world it works. It's a way that we really protect ourselves. We protect ourselves, and we our system, which is what I call them, our parts, our system is really looking out for us, constantly making sure that we're safe. And that's physically safe, emotionally safe, psychologically safe. And if there's any risk, our protectors will come. They'll come into and take in and step in to make sure we are safe. And especially if we experience times where we haven't been safe, right? They'll definitely, right, make sure that that doesn't happen again. And so our parts are very, very, let's say proactive, but even motherly like. That is kind of the analogy I use, very nurturing. Even though sometimes there are parts of us that we wish we could maybe not have in our life because we don't like the outcome oftentimes that they do provide and show up in our world. Yeah,
there's so much that you said there. I want to touch on a few points because I want to make sure I understand it. Curiosity, I just want to pin, because I always think curiosity is state of curiosity, we're usually in a nervous system regulated state. We're in our present time self because we can access curiosity. Because when we can't access curiosity, it means we're in a different time, is what
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's just one piece. Like I think I want to slow us down even for a second and just invite everyone here to get curious about arts, right? Like
Yeah.
this is a new language for a lot of people. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
haven't studied IFS, but I've read Richard Schwartz, who's the founder and the creator
Mm-hmm.
of IFS. One of his books, like I think the one I read was "You're the One You've Been Looking For."
Yes.
Great book, and it
Yeah.
does help you to start reflecting within. But I just wanted to go back to like what you were saying about protector parts. So there's parts of us that are created, mostly a lot of these were created when we were children, as a
Yeah.
way of interpreting and relating to the world. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And so these parts they do have, usually they believe that they have one job, right? And it's very fixed. And there are oftentimes very um, strict beliefs that a part carries. So if you like you stated, as a child, our mind and our brains are still developing. And so sometimes the way we think can be a little black and white. I mean, something's all good or all bad. And then we come and grow as an adult and realize, oh, there's a lot of gray. Like there's a lot of nuances.
And I
Right.
read that the parts don't know that the
Hmm.
bigger parts has grown up.
Yes,
So
there.
could you give an example? Let's just say maybe just like let's say something happened to you when you were 5 or 6.
Yes. Mhm.
So,
So if something happened to you in 5 or 6, say you dropped some milk, right? And then your parents said, well, shame on you for dropping that, right? So there's a part of you that maybe came in and said, okay, I have to do everything right. I can't make a mistake,
so
right? So,
great example. Thank you.
mhm.
So keep going. That's just
Yeah, yeah. Because you don't want to, the safety, right? Is I don't want to disappoint my parent. I don't want to do that. I don't, so having that part that's saying, I have to do everything right. I can't make a mistake. Well, we know that's perfectionism. That's our, clinical term, how we name it. And it continues to function as if you were still that little one who dropped that glass of milk,
right. So
right?
perfectionism, then I just want to kind of jump ahead to like as an adult, if you
Mhm.
have perfectionism, there's a place to be curious about
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you know what? I have to get it right
Mhm.
from.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep going. I think these
Yeah.
are so important for people to hear. The examples really, that like lit up my brain. So that really helped.
Mhm. Yeah. And so that 5-year-old, right, we were talking about might have some really strict beliefs that we were like, okay, if I do one thing, I'm going to disappoint this person, right? I'm going to let them down. I'm going to be a failure, right? Could have these very concrete beliefs. And it's not until we kind of get to know this 5-year-old and get curious about it, that we get to really understand why it's doing what it's doing. Oftentimes we just want to say, and even we have even been kind of told to, right, to just stop, right, or give yourself grace, right. And so we may have a part of us that does that, and that's still going to be warring with this 5-year-old that's looking out and making sure that you don't disappoint the people that mean the most to you.
Right.
Right.
So then the protector part has an age
Mhm.
and a job.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's why we say that there are no bad parts, which is why I really love IFS, internal family systems, because it removes the stigma of of the parts of us that are really trying to protect us, really. And oftentimes it can feel really stigmatizing to maybe realize, oh, I have a characteristic that, or a diagnosis that I don't like, it doesn't feel right. It feels, there's a part of me that feels like something's wrong with me. And in internal family systems, we say that no, nothing is wrong with you. Your brain is working exactly the way it's supposed to, and it's looking out for you. And yes, it may not be the way you want it to, right? But it's doing exactly what it's been designed to do.
Right. So
Yes.
then it gives us, we kind of touched on this last time, but it's that getting to the point where there's awareness of being
Mm,
kinder to ourselves,
yeah.
and
Mm,
just acknowledging again that this is very hard, and that it can make people feel a lot of shame because they're hard on themselves. But that is just an indicator that there's a part of you that you could get to know better,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Um,
yeah.
so are there different types of protectors, or are they all the same?
No, there are different types of protectors. There are some that are proactive and some that are reactive. The language that we use for proactive protectors is managers, right? And um, perfectionism is one of those proactive protectors,
Right.
right?
So a manager is like a perfectionist.
Yes.
I did
Um,
this like organizer, judge. That's
mhm.
the manager.
uh, could be also maybe if someone has a part of them that is making sure they follow certain, they have to have strict rules about how they do things, maybe a certain amount of time, which people would say like a pulsive behavior, but really that's just a part, right? That's trying to make sure that they're managing everything. And managers like to feel in control, and we all like to feel in control. And
Right.
so when we don't have control, which we know is a mirage oftentimes, but when we don't feel in control, that's when our reactive protectors come in. And our reactive protectors, they get a bad rep. They really do. Because they usually have a lot of casualty. They're called firefighters.
Uh,
And
okay.
so firefighters, if you think about when there's a house fire, they're not thinking about the curtains, they're not thinking about the couch that you just bought. They're trying to get rid of the fire. And so if that perfectionist part, if it had a failure, right, and you made a mistake, and now you're feeling shame and feeling like you disappointed someone, that firefighter is going to come in, right, and it's going to soothe that pain no matter the cost, no matter the cost,
You have
right?
an example, because I know, if I
Mhm.
was just thinking, like, if I'm listening to this for the first time, it could get a
Yeah.
little confusing. But if I think if
Mhm.
people hold on, it'll really start to make sense.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
fire, I had written down, quickly extinguishes vulnerability.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
what is an
So,
example? Yeah, like of
yeah.
it.
So an example of that could be drinking. Like drinking, if you're feeling some shame, if you're feeling your inner critic is just really, really getting to you, right? And you need to quiet it,
So
right?
like
So
a
you
bad day at the theater, a bad day at the office, the
yes,
response is, I'm gonna drink to just reduce this
just
feeling,
quiet this down. Yeah. Quiet
or
this.
or shop, or check out
Mm-hmm.
media,
Yeah.
or eat
Mm-hmm.
too much or eat too little, right?
Yeah.
All exercise too much. I mean, those are all
Mhm.
firefighters, aren't they? It's just
Yes.
never.
Self-harm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I like that you labeled it self-harm, because I don't think we're used to hearing that.
Yeah.
I think it's new. I mean, it's new
Hmm.
to me, because then, there's that, we have an idea of what self-harm is, but then
Hmm.
that is part of self-harm, is doing
Yeah.
things that aren't good for us, but that we're using that. There's like a coping strategy.
Yeah.
So, which
Hmm.
can bring in compassion, right? Like, even seeing your face just now, like if I
Yeah.
was your client and I was telling you about this coping strategy I have, and you said, yeah, it's almost like, yeah, of course you created coping strategy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We we talk a lot about ego as like a negative thing sometimes. And at the same time, we all want to feel valued. We all want to feel like we matter. And if that is in jeopardy, if we feel like we don't matter, or then yeah, that can cause a great deal of pain and stress to our bodies, to our, to our bodies, our mind. And we'll have a part that comes in to quiet that. Yeah.
Right, which kind of leads into, well, I know you, I think, is there another part? We talked about protectors. Oh, the exile.
Oh,
Because
the exiles.
you alluded to the next part we want to get to is like, why do we do these things? But
Yeah.
do you want to
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about exile?
Yeah. So in that example we use the 5-year-old, right? The 5-year-old would be considered the exile, the one who experienced that shame, right? And it wasn't intentional. The parent, wasn't trying to intentionally shame the child, but that's what this little one felt. And so the protector is perfectionism coming in to shield, right? This 5-year-old, to make sure that it doesn't feel that shame anymore. And and so while our protectors are great with making sure we are not feeling the pain and they're looking out for us, they do create though some distance between us and our exiles, right? Yeah. And so a part of our work is like building that connection and well, through curiosity, right? Getting connection with our perfectionist part, or and getting curious about it, and having some compassion for that 5-year-old, right? Who really needed to know, like, mom and dad still love you. It's a glass of milk. We can clean up together and it's okay.
Right. That's going into like that. There's some repair there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if the
hmm
repair doesn't happen, then the parts get more
They have to do their job. Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
So let's go into that then. How do we develop the protectors or the parts of us? How's that happen?
Yeah. It happens. Sometimes it happens directly. There's messages we get, right? Directly. Sometimes, depending on our upbringing, we may have people in our lives who do speak negatively to us, or we've experienced homes that were not safe, or lived in environments that were not safe. And so our brain is going to make sure we feel safe at all times. So especially if we're in a space where it's the safety is always a concern. Like we don't know in any given day what could happen. Sometimes the way our brain uses to protect us from that is making us feel like that's normal, right? Like, no, it's this is just every day for me, right? Every day I come home and this happens, right? And and so our those messages we get, or those indirect messages like the one we talked about with the 5-year-old, right? Come in, and our brain helps to protect us by building these protectors. And then also we talked a little bit about this last Friday, about these systems that also are at play. And those systems could be capitalism, right? Those systems could be like the hierarchy, and racism, things of that nature that impact how we interact with each other, right? And so if you are Black and brown person and you are struggling, right, to make ends meet because of lack of access and scarcity, then how you parent your child is going to be completely different if you had access to everything you needed, right?
That's a very good point.
Yeah. It's going to be completely different. And so, yeah, these big systems impact everything. And that's why, again, one of the greatest messages I think we can even tell ourselves is that it didn't start with you, and I know there's a book that is titled that, but it definitely it didn't start with you. This has been centuries in the making of how we got here to this point, right?
It's such a good point. It's a good message, I think, to have, isn't it? It didn't start with me. It kind of speaks to what you were talking about legacy burdens.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a huge legacy burden with racism, I would say.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And those legacy burns are things that aren't ours, right? We didn't take these on ourselves, but these are things that have been passed down and impact us. An example I gave was children are to be seen and not heard, right? We've heard that before, and we didn't believe these are ourselves, but this is something that came, like it came from somewhere, right? It came from somewhere, and it impacts how we parent, it impacts how we engage with children, you
Right.
know, and so these ideas, these ways of protection, because I feel that even that language of children to be seen and not heard is a way to help the parents maybe feel more in control, right? So that's a
Glad I was thinking about capacity, especially
mhm.
if it brought up don't be dramatic, because I think that's
Oh,
that was definitely in my family. Like
yes,
too much
same.
like, don't be dramatic. But then when you
Mhm.
think about it, it's because the adults didn't have the capacity to
You're
handle
right.
feelings, right? So they were like,
No, they didn't know.
right. So the message gets passed down, don't be dramatic. The message isn't, hey, let's explore what's happening with you and
Hmm.
really be with it. Like
Yeah,
that was the
yeah,
message. Childhood would be very different
it
for a lot,
definitely would.
right?
People wouldn't feel like if they had an emotion that it was wrong, right?
Right.
Because that's often like the indirect messaging there. But don't be dramatic. It's like, well, I don't know. I'm just having a response to this. So say that 5-year-old drops the milk and you're just crying, and parents says, "Don't be dramatic." You're like, well, I'm I'm sad because I know what's going to happen. You're going to be mad at me, and that's normal, right? That's a normal thing.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's good.
absolutely.
Um, so then one of the other questions I wanted to ask is, where do we start to know our
Mm,
internal world? What's the
yeah.
place for the beginners to start?
Mhm. Yeah. One thing that I feel can be really great for us to really engage with our inner world is, and this may cause a little hesitation, so I'm I'm slow
Yeah.
walking, to spend some time with yourself, right? Um, Oftentimes what was we were experiencing even during the pandemic is that people experience a lot of stillness that they didn't experience regularly, and a lot of their inner world started to communicate with them. And
Is that what?
yeah, yeah. So just even just spending time with yourself, and just attending to attending to what thoughts and feelings come up, and writing them down. Writing them down just to observe. And I know that that may be a challenge because a part of you might feel and judge what comes up, and that's allowed, right? That's allowed because that lets you know that's just another protector, right? That's coming in, so that's okay. But anything that is coming from a space where it doesn't have, and this is the self energy, which we didn't get to all the way, but that we are all born with, right? We have compassion, we have clarity, we have courage, and we have
I wrote
um,
these are
we have creativity. Like we have all these things, and so if we have parts of us that are maybe cutting off our curiosity, or we don't have compassion, we're really upset, or we feel like this part is irrational or doesn't make sense, and that's when we know that we need to write that down and just attend to it, and even pay attention to when you're responding to things. If there is a sensation you feel in your body, maybe something's happening at work and then you feel like your heart racing, right?
Right.
Or you're about to talk to your supervisor, ask for time off, and then your stomach just starts to quench in knots. That lets you know, oh, part of me is really nervous about this. Okay, let me, and using that language, a part of me too helps you to realize that it's not all of you, and it can give you a little bit more clarity in the moment,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, definitely attending to your body, thoughts, your feelings, and just noting them. Yeah, will definitely help you to explore your inner world.
That's so good. So like the C words were so
Hmm.
good. I saw that list somewhere that Richard was talking about.
Hmm.
Curious, creative, confident, connected, clarity, courage, and compassion. So when we
Yes.
move away from that, we know there's like that's what we were talking about, like how to go into the internal world. So when
Hmm.
we know when we're away from those places,
Yeah.
like just like you said, going to ask your supervisor for time off, you feel
Yep.
that so that you can recognize like, oh, there's because even just I think this is pretty profound when you just start to notice there's a part of me that feels nervous. There's a
Hmm.
part of me that feels sad. There's a part of me that's angry right now. Because oftentimes we can either feel like we're like merged. That's how I
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
we are angry, we are sad, we are depressed, versus that little bit of space where we're like,
Yeah.
actually there's a part of me that's anxious,
Hmm.
part of me that's excited because I'm going to take some time off. There's a part that's anxious about asking. And then of course you can take that further down the road and
Yeah.
say, maybe when you were young, I don't know, you didn't have permission to
Yeah.
ask for what you needed or wanted.
Hmm. Or there was a backlash for it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or there was a backlash. Yeah, that's such a good
Hmm.
point, right there. So you
Hmm.
try to get what you needed and want, and something happened that
Yeah.
discouraged or stopped it. So we end at the top of the hour, but I was wondering if you could just talk briefly about big T and little T, because I think
Yeah.
people think, I just heard this the other day, like nothing, nothing big happened to me when I was a kid. But even some of the examples I think we gave today, like a parent shaming you for spilling milk, means that they were probably shamed when milk was
Hmm.
spilled versus, oh, we
Hmm.
made a, let's clean up the accidents, no big, right? But if you could you mind
Yeah.
just a little bit before we go?
Absolutely. So, oftentimes I do, I think um, in therapy sessions or people ask like, oh, have you ever experienced trauma? And I think we have an idea of what trauma is. Like it's a very big event. I know we can probably all agree that the pandemic, right? That was a traumatic event, right? And then also things that are again impacting our emotional safety, right, can also just as distressing. And so, how I define trauma is a distressing event, and that could be a spectrum, right? So, whether it's me not wanting to tell somebody that I'm upset with something that they did because I'm afraid of being abandoned and I don't want to lose them as a friend, that's just right. That's just as meaningful, right? And it's distressing, right? And so both need to be right addressed, both of those, the big T and the little T. Yeah.
Good.
Hmm.
It's really good. Well, thank you, Alicia, for joining us again. We're really glad we're connected with you, and this information
Yeah.
is so helpful. Really appreciate it. And just to remind everybody that you can find these webinars on our website. We record them. And we're also doing lives every other Friday. Alicia was with us last week, and we talked a little bit about internal family systems there as well. Yeah, do you want to leave us with any thoughts, Alicia, about our internal worlds?
Yeah, I would. I want to encourage you that to know that no part of you is bad. right? No part of you is bad. And knowing the intent of them, that they are looking out for you, even though you may not feel like it, and which I understand, right? You may not feel like it really helps to go to a deeper level of self-acceptance and self-love. And I know we could all use a little bit more of that. Yeah. So I'm really hoping that there's some space for you to embrace those parts of you that you may not like. Yeah. Because they're looking out for you.
That's right. That's such a good, that's a beautiful thing to leave us with. They're looking out
Mhm.
for us,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we can get to know them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, thanks,
Absolutely.
Alicia. We'll have you back because I think we could have gone another half hour.
Yeah. I was like, oh no. I looked at the time. I said, man, okay.
Well, we'll have you back if you'll have,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. All right, everyone, take good care, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.